and welcome. You're watching the Explosive Exclusive with me, Padmaja Joshi. After the smoking Kaali poster, Leena Manimekalai has now launched a tirade against India. Sitting in Canada, the filmmaker, in fact, put out a series of tweets, a series of interviews, where essentially the thrust of her argument now was that for the largest democracy, India, today the situation looks like the country is turning into the largest hate machine. Despite facing multiple FIRs and numerous complaints, a section of her supporters have emboldened Leena Manimekalai enough to launch this kind of a tirade in the garb of creative freedom. However, not only does she have FIRs against her by political parties, but common citizens are also asking whether hurt is okay in the garb of free speech, especially when the same free speech is not afforded to other people when they may just hurt sentiments of other communities.
जो धार्मिक भावनाओं को आहत करने वाले इस तरह के ट्वीट जो होते हैं, कुछ विकृत मानसिकता के लोग इस तरह के जो ट्वीट लगातार करते हैं, जैसे काली फिल्म की डायरेक्टर लीना मणिमेकली जी ने किया है। इस तरह के जो ट्वीट हैं, कभी बीड़ी पीते हुए काली का, कभी शंकर जी का जो जारी कर रहे हैं, तो ऐसे विकृत मानसिकताओं के लिए जो धार्मिक भावनाओं को आहत करने वाले चित्र हैं और ट्विटर को टूल की तरह उपयोग जो कर रहे हैं, इसको वो रोकें अपने स्तर पर और इसकी स्कैनिंग की व्यवस्था करें, जिसकी वजह से स्कैनिंग के बाद से इस तरह की चीजें ना आए जो भावनाओं को आहत करती हो। ऐसा मैं ट्विटर को भी पत्र लिखने जा रहा हूं।
Anyway, she is in Canada. In the Canada, the film festival themselves have agreed that they will not screen that movie. So is it meaning that Indian government has influenced the Canadian government's decision? Canadian government independently has taken a view. This movie portrays hatred and she should not be given a space and opportunity inside that place. That is the Canadian government's view. Now, there are some people in India who believe simply by abusing others' faith, they get famous overnight, using which they believe they can sell their movies.
All right, today again, the Trinamool Congress, when asked about whether any action is being contemplated against a member of parliament who has extended support to Leena Manimekalai, Shogata Roy finally conceded that some action could be on the cards.
Mohamitra has made a statement. The party will consider a statement and decide on what steps are to be taken. The party will decide at the appropriate time. We have said earlier that we did not approve the poster of Maa Kaali. But we feel that BJP has no right to speak on this matter because BJP has not yet punished Nupur Sharma.
সেটা হচ্ছে মা কালী সকলের শ্রদ্ধেয়। মা কালীর উপাসনার এক এক রকম ধরন আছে, এক এক রকম ভক্ত, এক এক রকম পূজারী, তারা এক একভাবে মা কালীকে পুজো করেন, আরাধনা করেন এক এক পদ্ধতিতে। আমাদের বক্তব্য হচ্ছে কারুর কোনো ধর্মীয় ভাবাবেগ এমনভাবে মা কালীর কোনো ছবিকে উপস্থাপন করা হচ্ছে যাতে কোনো ধর্মীয় ভাবাবেগ আঘাত পাচ্ছে বা তাকে বিকৃত করা হচ্ছে, এইটা তৃণমূল কংগ্রেস সমর্থন করে না।
But what really is the standing and the status and the history and the interpretation and imagination of Goddess Kaali to Hindus? Somebody who has written at length about religion, mythology, about the imagining of God, Amish Tripathi now joins us, author and director at the London Centre. Thanks very much for speaking to us, Amish. Do you believe that the Kaali poster that shows Kaali Maa with a cigarette in her hand is offensive to Hindu sentiment? Because that's what's created such a storm.
I have to be honest, I have not, heard the comments of the director or the person who's made this film. One has not seen renditions of Kaali Maa smoking anywhere. One has to be honest. I think the atmosphere in which people have got upset with this is an atmosphere where one side feels that only their religion is treated with disrespect, while other religions may be treated with kid gloves. This is happening not just in India, but it's actually happening in the West as well. In the West, you'll find that Christianity is often treated with disrespect by the same groups, by the radical woke Marxists and the radical Islamists. And in India, Hinduism primarily, and then of course Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism are often treated with disrespect, which is what is leading to this. To these emotions. The best way to understand this is through John Nash's game theory. A state of disequilibrium is when one group feels severely disrespected, while another group, is treated with respect. The Nash equilibrium, according to John Nash, the Nobel laureate mathematician, Nash equilibrium can move only in one of two directions. Either all religions are treated with disrespect, or all religions are treated with respect. That is truly the background in which the reactions to this poster must be understood.
Now, many people have also asked for cases to be filed against her, that she should be jailed. In fact, the Indian government has also taken this up with Canada. Do you think this is an offence for which the director should be prosecuted?
Look, it's best left to the courts to decide, on this. And there is a due process that I'm sure will be followed, and we must leave it at that. If there are laws in place for those who feel offended to file a case. That's what is actually happening.
Now, also, it is about how one imagines one's God, because the filmmaker has said in her defense in one of her interviews, in rural Tamil Nadu, the state I come from, Kaali is believed to be a pagan goddess. She eats meat cooked in goat's blood, drinks arak, smokes bidi, and dances wild. And she says that is the Kaali that she had embodied in her film. Do you agree with this interpretation or depiction of Goddess Kaali?
Point of Kaali being a pagan goddess. So all of Hinduism is pagan, according to the Abrahamics. So not just even Lord Shiva, Lord Ram, not just that, not just him, but even other ancient Zoroastrian, Buddhism, Jain. As per the Western definition, these are all pagan religions. So I'm afraid I did not understand really. I don't know how to respond to this, because we are all pagan. That is the very definition of the term.
But
that any and that is the term that Europeans came up with. That anyone who's non-Abrahamic, i.e., non-Christian or non-Muslim, and therefore a follower of more ancient traditions, we are all pagan.
But I was talking more about the depiction and how she says she has seen Kaali depicted in Tamil Nadu, because she also said it feels like the whole nation has now deteriorated from the largest democracy to the largest hate machine and wants to censor her, that she doesn't feel safe anymore at the moment. What do you make of that? Is India actually becoming that intolerant that we can't take one interpretation of our religion?
As I said, earlier, we must be very clear that any violence or threat of violence is completely unacceptable. We've seen what happened, in Udaipur and in Akola. These are completely unacceptable, and the law must come down. And that did not happen on account of Hinduism. That happened on account of radical Islam. But Muslim religious leaders have said very clearly and criticized the criminals who carried out those attacks. So any violence, any threat of violence is clearly unacceptable, and the full force of the law must come upon that. But what one is seeing right now has to be seen in a larger context. That if Christians in the West and Hindus in India feel that radical woke Marxists and radical Islamists attack only our religion, and expect a one-way street of disrespect, then that is not sustainable, and that is what you are seeing in the present scenario. And as John Nash's game theory, and I will remind once again, John Nash is a Nobel laureate, more smarter than all of us, and he predicted what will happen in such a situation where one group is treated with disrespect, whereas another group is treated with kid gloves. This can go only in one of two directions. Either all groups get treated with disrespect, or all groups get treated with kid gloves / respect. And that is what you see happening, actually. It is a natural reaction. So the root of the problem are actually the radical woke Marxists and the radical Islamists who are injecting poison in democracies, not just in India, but actually around the world, in the West as well. You must see how noxiously radical woke Marxists and radical Islamists speak of Christianity in the West. Even those who are not Christian will get appalled by a kind of words that are used for Christianity and for Jesus Christ by these two groups, radical woke Marxists and radical Islamists. So there is a larger atmosphere which is giving rise to this, and the only way this can be stopped is if we revive our own ancient dharmic traditions, our ancient Vada traditions, where we speak of, we gently question all religions, but we treat all religions with respect. We treat all gods and goddesses with respect. This one-way disrespect is unsustainable.
It's interesting you say that we must gently question all religions while respecting all of them, because that actually is a fundamental question that India is increasingly asking now, or to be specific, Hindus are increasingly asking, that is Hinduism a soft target? It is being singled out so that you can take liberties with it. You talk about creative freedom, but the same liberties or creativity does not extend equally to all religions. Do you see that?
In fact, that was actually the very point that one was making. And it's, yes, you can say it is Hinduism in India, but it is Christianity in the West. Christianity is treated with a lot of disrespect by the two same groups that I was speaking of, radical woke Marxists and radical Islamists. And this is what creates unsustainable situations, a disequilibrium, using John Nash's theory. And as I said, equilibrium can move in only one of two directions. And you're seeing John Nash's theory play out in practice in India, and you will see it, and you are seeing it, in fact, play out in the West slowly as well. Which is why I argue that all of us who want respectful debate, the way our ancestors approached debate, the dharmic traditions of Vada, we must push back against radical woke Marxists and radical Islamists who are injecting poison into the debating square, both in India and in the West, with their one-way disrespect. And I must point out that the primary victims of the radical woke Marxists and the radical Islamists are actually their own people. Global terrorism databases show very clearly more than 80% of the victims of radical Islamic terrorism are actually Muslims. They kill those Muslims who they think are not pure enough. The Black Book of Communism makes very clear the primary victims of communism and Marxism are actually, again, their own people. So when we push back against radical woke Marxists and radical Islamists, their hypocrisy and their one-way disrespect, the primary people we will be helping are actually leftists and Muslims, because they're the primary victims of these two groups of radicals.
No, but there are also those who say that if Nupur Sharma deserves to be arrested because of what she said about the Prophet, Leena Manimekalai also deserves to be legally acted against. Is this a valid comparison to say that the two have committed similar offenses or supposed offenses, or is this a false comparison?
That is for the courts to decide, but what has happened essentially is that cases have been filed. and the courts will decide on this. But as I said, the reason why these issues are arising is because of the disequilibrium and the poison injected into democracies across the world by these two groups. And this is what John Nash predicted, and this is what is happening, and which is why cases are being filed, and there will be, perhaps regrettably, a negative spiral of intolerance. And as a proud follower of dharmic traditions, I would, like that we go back to our ancient ways of respectful and gentle questioning, of at the same time showing respect to religions, gods, and prophets of all, not just your favored groups. And the only way we can do that is if we stop or push back against the rather negative influence of these two radical groups, radical woke Marxists and radical Islamists.
Because it doesn't just stop at radical woke Marxists or Islamists, as you call them. It's also about politics, right? For example, you've got very few politicians who've spoken up, but then they've spoken up very vociferously. Mahua Moitra, for one, she says that Kaali is a meat-eating, alcohol-accepting goddess. She's been booked for that as well, because she's also accused of hurt. Overreaction?
Who am I to endorse or not endorse anything? Essentially, there is a due process, and the court should decide what the what the way forward should be. There is a due process, and we must allow the courts to decide.
Is there also a hesitation on the part of people in general and political parties in particular of even touching a community and their sensitivities with a barge pole? For example, the Trinamool Congress, of which Mahua Moitra is a member of parliament, they were at the forefront of demanding Nupur Sharma's arrest because she was accused of hurting Muslim sentiments. But in the case of Mahua Moitra, they have just disowned her. No action, not even they have condemned, but no action. She continues to be their MP.
I never comment on politics or the actions of political parties. My comments are more from a social issue, from a social perspective. I will reiterate once again that from a social perspective, an atmosphere where certain religions are treated with noxious disrespect, and certain religions are treated with kid gloves or cannot be questioned, or are treated with more respect than what other religions are. This situation is unsustainable, and you're seeing the impact of that not just in India but in many countries in the world. And those of us who like a genuinely liberal tradition must look at the root causes of what is causing this unsustainable situation. I will repeat once again, the root causes are the one-way disrespect that is done by two groups primarily.
But to think that on the one hand we're talking about gentle questioning, and there are actually two Indians who were murdered. They were practically beheaded, not only because they questioned a religion, they merely expressed support for someone who spoke about a religion. What does that say about the situation in our country, that this is happening in 21st century India, that people are getting beheaded merely for expressing support for a point of view?
Once again, I do not comment on politics, but is there a problem of violence in certain religious groups? Yes, there is. It's not just within India, but it is across the world. And this does need careful analysis. It does need, religious leaders of those religions to openly speak against this and carry out de-radicalization measures, because you have a right to file a court case, but violence, taking the law into your own hands, is completely unacceptable in a civilized country.
Now, this tension that you see happening, and this clash of ideas, an actual physical clash of communities, many are saying this is a result or this is symptomatic of rising Hindutva in India? You think so?
I'm not understanding the question. Are there different interpretations of, within a religion such as Hinduism? Yeah, of course there are. Just as there are different interpretations within all religions, So Christianity has Roman Catholicism, as Protestantism, as Greek Orthodox churches, where the same scriptures are interpreted quite differently. Islam has Sunni and Shia Muslims. Even within Sunnis, there are different schools. Even within Shia philosophy, there are different schools. So this is true of all religions. The moot point is not that. The moot point is the unsustainable disequilibrium that has been brought in by two groups, primarily radical woke Marxists and radical Islamists, by their one-way disrespect. This is unsustainable, and what you're seeing is the effect of this play out sadly, as John Nash, the Nobel laureate, had predicted. That's what actually you're seeing in action. And I will repeat once again, as someone who is a proud follower of traditional dharmic ways, who is deeply liberal, I would argue that we need to push back against these two radical groups so that we can open up the space for respectful and polite questioning, which is the traditional Indian way.
Very interesting points that there should be respect, but there should also be gentle questioning, and more importantly, if there is blatant disrespect of any religion, tradition or belief, there definitely should be a pushback, although an ideological one. Amish Tripathi, pleasure as always speaking to you. Thanks very much for joining us here on Times Now. Taking a very, very quick break. Back in a minute.